Hey, welcome, podcast buddies, to a very special day. We are here with the man, the myth, the legend, Bruce motherfucking Miller. Bruce,
Hi, it's
thank
very
you.
nice to be here.
It's our pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time.
I'm a
So,
huge fan of your podcast, so I'm nervous to be in front of you and being quizzed. But I hope you guys know the show so much better than I do. I hope I will make pass muster.
you flatter us too much, truly. So let's just swan dive right on into it. It must have been such an honor that you were selected to be the showrunner for The Handmaid's Tale in the first place. And I'm going to assume that that's based off of some of your earlier work in the 90s. That had you had some strong themes going there with some rape themes and what was it, like The Stranger Beside Me. But with season one, you had a rubric to go off of, which you held pretty well true to, but then seasons 2 and beyond were pretty well off piece, that you could do this massive amount of world building. Did you find that with season 5 and then going forward for season 6, that you're going to be utilizing the rubric of the testaments and kind of holding more true to that as you created season 5 and as you work towards season 6? Or are you more using that as a general guideline?
I'm not using it as much of a general guideline as you guys think I am. I am really, honestly, I'm trying to make The Handmaid's Tale and make that good, and I'm not thinking about the testaments. I'm trying not to queer the testaments. I'm trying not to screw myself so I can't do it. Like, I don't want to kill Hannah, because I know she's in the book. So like things like that. Lydia's not going to get in a plane crash because she's in the testament. So. But I think very big in general about that stuff, because two things. First of all, the book, The Testament, is a sequel to the book, The Handmaid's Tale. It's not a sequel to the show. So a lot of things don't make sense just from the show to that. So I can't really think about that. So I've got to make sure that The Testament's TV show is a sequel to the Handmaid's Tale TV show. Mm-hmm. So the Handmaid's Tale book had a very dramatic part of her life that was going on in the background of the story she was telling. She really didn't have too much agency. What ended up, it all just happened to her, but it was very dramatic and a good TV story. The Testaments has a whole bunch of different stories that take place over a whole bunch of different times with different central characters. It's a very different thing. So I think that I am keeping the Testaments in mind. Certainly working on it because I'm writing it as I'm doing this, so I'm breaking it and thinking about it all the time. But I really don't want to make it a TV show that's accurate and not good. I'd rather have it be a TV show that's excellent, and you guys can tell me all the ways I departed. So that's the key, and it's the key to this season. I mean, most last seasons stink, and certainly most last episodes stink, or they ruin some part of the show that you liked or whatever. So the first thing I'm trying to do is just make a good season of television, a solid season. Yeah. And then we can think about making it a solid finale season. Then we can think about, all of those things. But the pilot is a good example. I just wanted to write a good episode of TV. That was the first thing. Make it good. If you don't know the name of the main character, you don't know the name of the main character till the very end. And the main character on screen kills a man with her bare hands in the pilot. And you never think about that. You never think about what a terrible person she is with her bare hands. It's a trick to just try to boil all that and just say, okay, we're going to make a really good episode of television. So that if people turned on, they're like, wow, if they didn't know anything about it. So that's the goal. And I think it's going to be the goal with the Testaments to just make it as good as possible, because, accuracy, I don't get any grades for accuracy, except from you guys.
No, we don't care about accuracy as much as you think we do. I think we're just intrigued at the way that you make these things come together. To piggyback Roxy's question, something I've been wondering forever is, like, what was your reaction when you were reading the Testaments and you realized that at some point you may have to reconcile the Aunt Lydia of The Handmaid's Tale with what we see coming in the Testaments? Did you have like this oh shit moment, like, seriously, Miss Outwood, what am I going to do with this?
I didn't, because I knew so far ahead of time. But okay. because Margaret and I had that conversation. I love saying Margaret, like Margaret and I had that conversation. We were talking. She was thinking about writing the Testaments. She was writing the Testaments. she was telling me what she was thinking about with Lydia. She
Mhm.
has you know, an independent relationship with Ann Dowd, who's the actor, and so they talk all the time about it. I talk to Ann about it. So you know, it's an organism, because Ann Dowd is taking words that I wrote that I stole from Margaret Atwood and turning them into a character that doesn't have anything to do with any of those things. So it was very much I think Lydia had already started to move in that direction just based on those conversations. So yes, it's because I don't think I didn't think they were irreconcilable at all. I think they're exactly the same person. So, and I had lots of conversations with Margaret about the backstory of Lydia before the Testaments. So I was a little more, I mean, it was during the first season that I started to think that might be coming to fruition. So I had a little more heads up than you guys.
Ah,
Wow.
cool.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to know at that moment.
Thanks.
That was bugging me for a long time.
But it is nice, you know, it is weird when you guys see the end of the story. That's the hard thing, which is if you guys say, oh, they're working towards this, this must be this, and this must be this. There's a lot, for me, I'm both much more specific and much more general than you think. I mean, like in the scene, the thing that's happening should be the real thing that's happening in the scene. Bob's telling Cynthia he loves her. That's what's happening. He's got to say, I love you, that all that stuff's got to happen. And all the other stuff is a lot more general. Just giving the actor something to play, little edges to get around, little ways to be angry or supportive, and how they react to people saying things that are thoughtless, and how they react when they say things that are thoughtless, or when they regress or say something that's too honest. So it's all about kind of, there's the conversation, and then there's the two people riding that roller coaster of the conversation and their feelings and dynamics moving forward. And that's kind of a more general thing. Because then you guys can bring as much of you to it as you possibly can. Like, I don't think June would do that, or I don't think June would do that. The writer screwed up. You know, there's lots of you bringing all of that stuff to it. So
How much of that is a discussion in the writer's room of, I don't think June would do that? Is that constantly being fleshed out?
Oh, that's the entire job.
That's the whole thing, right?
The whole job is exactly the whole job that I do. It's like, if you guys, I mean, what you guys do and sit and say, I wonder what happens in the next episode, and what would you do? That's exactly what I mean, we're better at it.
Right.
Because we're I mean, I try to think of people who are the best at it in the world.
Yeah.
But that's exactly the same job. It's sitting in a bar saying, you know what should happen in Game of Thrones? It's exactly that job, but the people can execute it also. You know, so you say, I really would like it to be like this. But I think in the writer's room, and the show is uniquely, for me, from the point of view of June. I mean, in the pilot, there is, I mean, I think there's two shots that are not from June's point of view. One is staying with Serena after the ceremony when she gets upset, which is a huge scene to set up the entire dynamic of the show that keeps going till the finale of season 5. I mean, her being upset that she doesn't like the ceremony. And then there's one moment where you stay with Luke at the car after June and Hannah run into the woods. But other than that, the entire show is from June's point of view. Every single thing is something June is in. And when you think about the challenge to Elizabeth Moss at the beginning, it's not being in every scene, it's being in every shot. I mean, her work day, especially the first season, was, you know, pathologically remarkable. So I'm very lucky with Lizzie that we're close, and she trusts me and all of those kinds of things. And we just kind of got lucky with our personalities that fit together. But she's involved in a lot of those conversations too. Almost all of it is, I really am thinking about what would probably really happen, and then what would these people probably really do. So if you guys forget that it's a TV show, you could guess every single thing that's going to happen, because everything that's going to happen is probably, most of the time, 99% of the time, I tell you what's going to happen. Like, she goes, this boat's going to Canada. I'm going to get on this boat. It's going to go to Canada. I'm on the boat. It's going to Canada. You guys are like, she's never getting to fucking Canada. Never. You're never getting to Canada. And I'm like, they're going to Canada. They're going to Canada. They're going to Canada. Look, they're going to Canada. There's Canada. Look at her walking down the gangplank. She's going to Canada. You're like, I've never gone to Canada. Then she's in Canada. You're like, oh my God, I'm so surprised.
Boy, we are obtuse when you put it like that.
No, it's just audience members, and especially in television and drama. Drama's been put together the same way for 5,000 years, right?
Yeah.
Based on like 1 or 2 years in Athens when they had this wonderful drama festival. So that's how everybody puts their stuff together. That was fine for a while, but people are seeing so many more narratives in a day now than even they were 10 years ago. They've internalized those things to the point where they think that's what would happen in the real world, because every bit of drama you see is exactly the same way that people learn their lesson or get redeemed.
Right.
But none of that stuff is actually true.
Right.
It's just drama. And so June's story is not a hero's journey. It's not it's not that kind of thing. It's just not that story, because I'm not copying that. I'm copying Margaret, and Margaret wrote a tale, and that's very, very different. So I think that we're so ingrained to expect certain things. You guys hear it, I'm sure, when you hear people at restaurants talking, they sound like they're on a TV show, not like they're real people.
Right.
You know, they are always saying things like you hear on The Bachelor, like, it seems like nothing, everything I'm feeling right now are emotions. I love that. I'm sure I didn't answer your question, Marjorie, but
no, you did, but you brought me to something that I just remembered I really think is perfect. And I have to know if you did this intentionally when you wrote the finale of season 5, because I feel like, especially since starting this podcast, like we watch it, it's almost like I try to get my first watch of the episode and like really just enjoy it as a fan, but I can't get like that podcasting part of my brain out, right? And through the entire finale, I was so engrossed with everything that was happening in the scene, in the moment, that even when I heard the baby crying on the train, I knew it was going to be important. I knew this baby had to be of significance, and I genuinely could not figure out who it would be. I'm like, my brain was like going through everyone. Who could it be? Who could it be? Were you purposely trying to make me completely forget about Serena through that entire episode?
100%.
It was perfect.
It worked.
1,000%. And not only was it shot that way, there's all sorts of things in the episode to make you forget about Serena. We don't use her music. We don't do all sorts of things. There's no teal or very little teal in the eepisode. You never think, she never crossed your mind. No, it's exactly that, which is, oh my God, she was at the front of my brain every fucking episode. And I didn't even remember she existed.
I know. I felt like an idiot at the end. I'm like, how can I go sit in this podcast and talk about this? And then I'm like, they had to have done that on purpose. I cannot be the only one that forgot about Serena. Totally.
No,
I thought it was perfect.
And it's kind of like that end piece only works if you forgot about Serena. Yeah, so absolutely. If I didn't get you to forget about Serena, I would have cut it off, and it would have ended with June on the train, which would have been fine. You could start the next season with her finding Serena. That's no big deal. Right. So I give myself a lot of endings usually that I can clip off, because sometimes you get to one moment that's so great. There was a scene in the finale. I don't remember which season it was, but it's when June goes to Lawrence's house for the first time, and he says, "You're not going to be in any trouble, are you?" She says, "No, sir." That "no, sir" was so great, and also the shot. And Lizzie is so patient as an actor. She waits. She knows the camera's on her. She's been doing this since she was 2. Yeah. She knows, when the camera's on her. She knows everything. But she waits and lets it go, bounce around in her mind. What's she gonna say? What's she gonna say? What's she gonna say? And then she just says, "No, sir." It has everything that you've seen on her face up to that point kind of distilled, and it comes out. And it was so long. And I was like, well, I can't go. I had all this stuff after that. It's like, why go past that? Nope, take the win.
Right.
We're done.
Take the win. Yes.
I do have a question about season 5. As far as the totality of the season, I truly think that the pacing was excellent. I think it was a really solid season 5.
I agree.
So
you're right.
And I like the 10. I like the 10 episodes. As much as a fan, I prefer just give me like 30 episodes. But as far as storytelling, and I really prefer the 10 episode season. But I'm just wondering if there was a storyline or some deeper fleshing out of a character that ended up on the cutting room floor that you really wish could have been in this season.
Not on the cutting room floor.
But anywhere.
But lost, not put into a script. Right. almost always have a significant amount of story that ends up in outlines or what I call on the board. We put up our stories on the board with index cards, just like you would imagine. June does this, June does that. It's all very easy. So, but there are a ton of things that we are unable to do after our initial conversation. So usually we start the season and we have about 2 weeks of retreat where we talk about general stuff. And then after the end of that, we kind of sit down. And so during that period is when people are thinking kind of big picture and all sorts of stuff. And there's always things there that are spectacular, that are fascinating. They're such good pieces of storytelling that we never can even get close to. Because the way to do them well would be you'd have to kind of commit to all sorts of storytelling, so you really feel like it's too good, it's too big and juicy. So we get a lot of that. This season, though, there's a unique situation because we lost Alexis.
Right.
And we lost her. It wasn't that deep into our process, but I was thinking about storylines for Alexis in season 4.
Right.
And so because she unexpectedly left, Moira and Rita's story suffered a huge amount.
Okay, that
Okay.
I knew.
Because
I really,
they had so much of a story built around that, and I don't want to go into details, but there was a huge bit of, and then so I had to scramble a little bit to make them part of the other piece of the story, because the part where what they were central to kind of vanished unexpectedly close to when we were starting.
Thank you for explaining that, because that would be my biggest criticism of season 5 was the Moira Rita. They've just like kind of vanished into the background, but now and
they're so good. They make so much out of every moment. But
right,
I mean, if you see the first few episodes, you see where especially the first one with Moira, you see she had definitely a bigger runway for the whole season. But it just you have to change a lot of things, and in a good way. The house is built together, fits together. The house of cards fits together really well. But the bad thing is when you lose a card, everything should fall down, and it does. What I want is, if I have an episode where I could swap, it could have Lexus in it or not, I haven't done my job. Right. It should be absolutely diminished if you change anything.
No, that makes
not that I'm
sense.
anal or anything.
So what you're telling me is that come season 6, Moira will be brought to the forefront in a different way.
And she's such a wonderful actor.
So incredible.
Oh my God.
And I think you've done a really good job of fleshing her out even more from the book. So that's why I'm like, I don't understand where she's just going away right now. Okay.
And she isn't. And I think that in some ways, as a show from June's point of view, she's very much, she looms so large for June. It's odd that we don't, because I think when her conscience talks to her, it's probably in Moira's voice. Do you guys have a voice that you hear like when, when your voice, mine's Lizzie now, but
I was going to say
somebody else, but now
June,
it's Elizabeth Moss.
I'm like, just channel June.
Just channel June, channel Ann Dowd.
Yes.
Who's the most lovely? I know they're all lovely people, but she's particularly gentle and soft spoken to be playing such a terrible person with such a ferocious temper.
But she plays dreadful so well. Like, my voice in my head is Ann Dowd's character in Hereditary.
I can't watch them in anything else. So
right.
I can't watch them in anything else, and I certainly can't watch them. They all warn me very carefully when they're going to be naked in something else, and then I'm completely like I'm not allowed at all.
You're blushing just thinking about it.
I have a little bit of I mean, when we do, there's a special process when you do any scenes that are nude scenes in terms of restricting, because the dailies show everything, and so you want to restrict that stuff. And I even restricted for me. I'm like, just edit it and I'll look at it later. It's like they're like my children now. I don't have any interest. It's like,
Dad.
And they have I'm sure they have beautiful nudies. They're professionally beautiful. So
right.
But I'm, as I said, I'm too shy. I remember Sydney Sweeney telling me not to watch Euphoria.
Fair enough. I can see where she's coming from with that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
She was great in that, though.
Oh, she's a spectacular actress, and and uses, you know, and I think has so far used like this much of what she can do. She's
Right.
excellent.
One of your strengths, though, that we've gushed about multiple times is your ability to create a beautiful ensemble cast. And every single person, like you said, a house of cards, they're all so powerful and strong as actors on their own that putting them all together, I mean, you've done something masterful by creating this environment. It's just really staggering to see. Some of the other
Well,
things.
thank you. It was unexpected. I mean,
well.
it was just, it was unexpected because I hadn't done it before.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And also, you know, casting, once again, is very, very subjective. But the thing that I felt was that every single person who auditioned who I thought was right for the role,
Mhm.
when I was like, oh, that's that person, ended up getting it. Every single one of these people
Wow.
was like, oh, that's it. That's
really
Luke.
That's the
Mhm.
one.
You know,
Yeah.
I didn't have any feeling about Luke, the color of Luke's skin at all. OT comes on and does this. I'm like, oh my God, that's Luke.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
You
'Cause
know,
that was one
yeah.
of the things that we were going to ask about is that, I mean, from the first season to this season, Luke has definitely come to the forefront, and his relationship with Lizzie, with June, his relationship with the environment that he's in, and the way that the finale ended with him putting his hands up and the police coming for him, and he's now seen as a dangerous black man. It's really hard to not see as anything other than political commentary on our current state of affairs. Was that intentional?
Of course, and certainly we're all sensitive to that with our actors of color, and OT is very sensitive to that, and more so, I think, because he's British, and so he isn't. He's playing someone who's part of a tradition that he's not part of, you know, that he doesn't feel, and so I think he's mindful of that, and I'm, you know, exceedingly mindful of the fact that I'm kind of blind to it in a way that most people aren't, so I should pay attention when people tell you that that's going to, you know, when you choke him, it's going to come across one way. I'm like, really? I never even thought of that. So I've got to, you know, I listen to people around me who are more sensitive to that stuff than I am, because I should be more sensitive. But I think OT definitely brings that stuff up to me. He's a policeman of that stuff in a good way.
Mhm.
But the cool thing I think is that he's also in Canada, which has a different feeling about that as well. I mean, he's also a refugee that they hate. You know, it's like there's all of these reasons for them to disrespect him. You know, in their culture. So I think it's what you said though is a real commentary, a compliment to the actor, because if you think about it from his point of view, right? He read a pilot. In the pilot, he dies in the first scene, and then he's in a couple of flashbacks. Yeah. So based on what I told OT would be going on in season 5 is why he took the role. So you have to cast someone who's great, who's in one moment going, go, 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 go. That's it. And then he's dead. As far as you know, he's dead.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, right.
and he's got and it's such a wonderful performance that he's someone who can do that and be memorable, but also do all the stuff he's done this season, how complicated it was, and how it made him look genuinely confused and weak. I mean, the funny thing about Luke is Luke always says what I would say. That's he's exactly me. So when everybody says, "Oh my God, how can he say that?" I'm like, yeah, exactly. I mean, he's Bruce Miller's first instinct. You know, you know, trying to be a nice guy, and so that's it. And I know that OT is the same way. Just a lovely man, so wants everybody to be happy. We have the most lovely gentleman on our staff. On our cast, Max is, and they worship the ground that Lizzie walks on as an artist, not as a woman, not just as an artist and a leader. And you know, she's the we director.
So I have
she's
a
like this
question.
big.
Oh, you meant we, like we, like pocket
The
size. She's pocket sized.
You think she's 5'3"? It's adorable. Go on.
So I have a question that kind of ties into what Roxy was asking. I mean, The Handmaid's Tale is political, no doubt. You've in this day and age, you cannot separate the two. I mean, we've got Nazis on the 405 just chilling. January 6th, the right to democratically elected government is hanging by a thread. And then we've got the Roe v. Wade reproductive health care disaster. Things are scary. And then throughout season 5, we've been seeing Gilead seep into their lives in Canada. And in episode 10, it was blatantly obvious with June saying, "It's changing, Luke. This country is changing. America wasn't Gilead until it was. And then it was too fucking late." Did you write this with the intent of using your art to, I don't know, just give a commentary about, or maybe even a warning about our own nation's real life current state? Like, was this art imitating life?
Well, I think it's just like everybody else. It's the same stuff I'm thinking about. You know, like I read the newspaper, and I guess no one else reads the newspaper. So, but I read Twitter, and I do read the newspaper, and I especially we have a very, very news junkie writing staff and a very, very engaged cast in and in a strange way, because as you guys know, they're super international. Yvonne is, a Polish woman who grew up in Australia. Her parents were refugees from Poland. So she grew up the child of refugees, and didn't fit in. She was this enormous blonde thing.
Hey, I'm like 2 inches taller than Yvonne. She's not giant.
You should see the 5th grade pictures though. It's like,
I can commiserate. Just the jolly green giant lurking in the background.
But that's the way she sees herself, as this kind of, and so they all have very different points of view on the US and on politics and all of that stuff. They're bringing something from all across the world. So that's interesting. But I don't think it's art imitating life. I think it's just the questions that I'm asking are Margaret's questions from 35 years ago. That's what makes it so amazing, is I'm not inventing anything. I'm just, putting it into dialogue form. But I'm still milking stuff out of the book. I mean, it's just by reading and rereading and thinking and kind of pondering, and and actually when I say reading, I'm very dyslexic, so I don't really read that well. So mostly I listen when I read. I mean, I know it's strange considering what I do for a living, but
I get that. I totally get that.
A very poor reader, and so people with dyslexia, take heart. But it's I think for politics, the one message that I try to send is try to do the show as a take on the concerns of the people who I know now and are living in this time. And so I always think the big question now is, okay, it isn't just going to go back to the way it was before. So how do you fight the long war? And that's what that's what I'm thinking about. It seems like everybody's thinking about that, or coming to terms with the fact that we're not going to go back to before Gilead. So how do you fight Gilead, especially when it might not change in your lifetime? So that's the June story, and I think our world story, which is in the end, June's story is not about running. You can't run. She ran. Trying to run from Gilead. She's trying to run from the people in Canada she hated. They can't run. You can't run. That's not what it's about. You have to find a way to stay and fight. And so was what the show is about. And so that to me feels like something people are talking about now in terms of politics, but it's much more an emotional thing about how do you, if you're in a fight, if you're still fighting, you haven't lost. The only way to lose is to stop fighting. So for June, if she just fights till the day she dies, she'll never lose. So she doesn't think she's going to win. I think at this point, she doesn't think she's going to win, but she certainly doesn't think she's going to stop fighting. So how do you prepare yourself? How do you put yourself into that? How do you, your kids are getting older. How do you feel now that you're going to pass these problems along to them?
Right.
Oh,
how do you prepare them for that?
Yeah,
that's the question for the ages. And you make that abundantly clear in the penultimate episode as well, when June sits down next to Twello and says, how we honor those soldiers? We fight and we keep fighting. And you're just kind of slapping the viewer in the face with exactly what you were saying, though. It's like, she's never going to give up the fight. And it's not about whether or not she runs. It's about how do you go up against this evil, and what is the best way to do that? And
how do you have a life while you do it?
Right.
Do you have a life? I mean, are you basically sacrificing, everything you had that was a pleasure before Gilead, or getting rid of all of those things, and taking on a life that's very spare emotionally, because you're going to fight this. What do you give up to fight this forever and ever and ever? Do you want to be a fighter forever and ever and ever? June wasn't a fighter before Gilead. Why is she a fighter now? There's just all sorts of interesting things. And I like the fact that she's facing in some ways the same questions that people are facing now, but that's only because Margaret was smart enough that she was facing the same questions 35 years ago. And those questions don't go away. And I think a lot of it, because we're always struggling against kind of as I learn every day, the forces of, ignorance and misogyny. And so the idea that you're just going to get up your energy and fight for a while and then you're going to win and stop is just not the way things work. And for June, I think it's hard to, she really kind of sat for a long time in that room and imagined how she'd fight back if she had the chance. She got the chance, and she's fighting back exactly the way she wants. She's convincing people to send in army men on her behalf. She's fighting. And she's starting to realize, okay, I got what I asked for. I killed Fred's dead. We're getting all sorts of progress. Things are not, it's bubbling up in Canada. It's not going to go away in my lifetime. So what do I do then? So I think it's when do you stop fighting to win, but fighting to fight? Keep fighting.
Well, I think you worked that in really well with Alexis Liddell leaving and having to change up everything, because her exit on the show pretty much sums that up in one little scene. It was perfect.
And it seems so, a lot of times, and the episodes are very ham-fistedly obviously put together, I think, because I write them, and I think, it's like, but all the very first episode of season 5 is all about June's getting options. The first option is stay home with Luke and Moira. And it seems like that option, she's going to have a lot of explaining to do, being covered in blood. So she goes to the next option. The next option is, I'll be with my girls. Yeah. They all want to keep fighting. I don't know if I want to keep fighting. And then the next idea is, hey, I'll just go to, and I'll just go see my friend Alexis. And then she's presented with another possibility. Oh, I could go back to Gilead. Look what she did. So all of these, none of them feel particularly lovely. I mean, she felt so good, and now what to do next seems pretty good. So she realizes, well, what did I think was going to happen? I thought I was going to be in jail. I should probably go do that. She can't even do that. So it's much more about none of her possible predicted outcomes occur and how unsettling that is than good or bad outcomes.
Right.
Yeah. It's so I like the fact that we as an audience think ahead for our characters. We're always trying to predict what happens. And I like the characters to do the same, at least a little. So they're not idiots. But the thing I wanted to say, Roxy, I wanted to tell you about that scene is the important thing to remember is characters don't speak truth. Walking across a room, spitting, taking a poop, punching someone, speaking, those are all just actions. They can mean lots of things. If I come over and pat you on the back, I could hate you, I could be poisoning you, or I could be greeting you. I could be doing all sorts of things. Dialogue is exactly the same. It's just another action. And what they say is all I'm telling you is not what's true. I'm telling you what that person would say at that moment. So what does that tell you? So she may not believe that, but what does that tell you about her? She's boosting up Mark. She's trying to boost up Mark. It actually doesn't matter whether she believes they should keep fighting. What matters in the scene is she's coming in, Mark's despondent, and she's boosting him up and trying to boost herself up at the same time. That's what it's about. So the words, don't get hung up on the words, don't get hung up on your words. I mean, people don't ever say what they mean. How are you feeling? Oh, I'm fine. I don't care how you're feeling, and you're probably not fine. I mean, it's like, it's like, so the amount of subtext that we have in our world is a lot, and people expect it all to be text on television. But just think of it as another communication as much as the set design, the lighting, the camera move. The camera move and the music tells you a lot more about. Put a funny song under that scene in the tunnel at the beginning of season 2, and it's funny.
Right.
So, and Adam Taylor tells a lot of the story than I do with the script.
Oh, it's so good. Oh,
he's a genius, and I don't throw that word around. This is his first job, by the way.
Get out of here.
What?
His first job in television. Yes, I know. Roxy,
That
that
is
face is
so
my face
cool.
all the time. He's
That's
so
flabbergasting.
wonderful. And he doesn't read the scripts or watch the episodes. I don't know if you know this. So that when we do what's called music spotting, which is you play the episode, you said, this is a spot I'd like music. I am so bad at it that I don't even go. So because I always want it to be dead silent, so I let them do it, and then I'm like, oh, you're of course right.
Yeah.
But that's the first time that he sees it, is when it's music spotting.
Really?
The first time he
Oh my
knows anything
word.
that's going to happen, and
Wow.
every time he just sobs, and he's like so emotional about it. He's like, Luke, she's not on the plane. Sam's not on the plane, Luke. And
That
it's
is
great. It's so wonderful. But because we
Wow.
get this great read, and he's such an emotional guy, and he's like, and so the music you get is really from someone who, like you, just got swept up in it the first time. And this is, and he has big emotions, and he feels with cellos and all this. And it's so wonderful. And it's a miracle to me. And also on our show, we kind of blur the line between music design, which are kind of sounds, environmental sounds, and then dialogue, and all that stuff has to work together. So you have to have those people talking to each other. Usually what happens is, the music guy gives them the music and someone else kind of puts all that stuff together. So the sound people on our show go a huge way towards making the television show what it is. And most of the stuff you don't notice. I mean, look at that shot, the shot at the beginning. Lizzie is an astonishingly talented director, as good as she is as an actor. If she wasn't an actor at all, if she was walking on the set as a director, she is very, very skilled. And in the finale, there's that great opening shot, that horror movie shot of pulling back up a street, and the sound mix on that with the sound and the sound of the environmental sounds and all that kind of stuff. By the way, if you had watched, the truck did come by before a couple of times in previous episodes.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
I remember that truck.
I did not. That's awesome.
It almost ran them over when they were on the sidewalk.
Was that the same? I was going to go back and look
that's
at
the same truck when they were scrubbing.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
That's so cool.
We couldn't afford to put the song in there, but that would have been good too. We could only afford it once. There were other song choices there. That was another lovely scene with a lot of song choices. What did you guys, what's on it when you guys saw it? You guys saw it. I think it's the Beach Boys, right?
Yes, it's Kokomo.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a lovely choice.
It's a choice for sure.
Hopefully you won't see it again. That was a wonderful sequence, and a really to do that for a TV show, because that's very ambitious for a TV show.
It was.
Especially with your number one of the call sheet directing. But it was, I mean, it's exactly what I want, which is I don't want it to look like anything I've ever seen before. I just want it to look like what it feels like to get run over.
Yeah.
That was perfect. That was so
and accomplish that. It was so stunning. And
horrifying.
Again, like that, horrifying in the best of ways. Like, but that, again, that like that round robin 360 shot of the neighborhood closing up around her. It's so good.
It's terrifying, and there's nothing wrong.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
The camera's scary.
It was that's exactly what it was. There was nothing going on, and
There
I
was
was
nothing going on.
horrified for the 30 seconds. I know. That was so cool.
They
because
utilize
you're
that
no
same
dummy.
Yeah, exactly. They utilize that same camera trick in the horror movie It Follows that came out a few years ago, and that alone creates such a vibe of what's going to be happening and what's lurking around the corner of once the camera does stabilize. What are you looking for in the shot? And like it draws your attention in so effectively.
What it does is I'm always trying to kind of make everybody lean forward a little bit, like kind of like, what am I looking for? What's the same way June is, because I feel like a little bit. I don't want to guide you too much towards what you should be paying attention to. I want to kind of, a lot of times I want to show you a big thing, let your eye go where it goes. And here it's a good example of, I didn't see that fucking truck coming. So you're with June in ignorance. You're not with her in knowledge. You have the same feeling she does, which is something's amiss. But, besides that, you don't have the further knowledge of what's going to happen, and you really are, like Marjorie said, you are looking around going, something's going to happen. I know, Bruce, something's going to happen, and it just, you don't know. It could happen now, it could happen next season, you don't know.
Right.
But that was one of the best runovers I've ever seen.
Good.
And it's a nice noise when they go over
The
her
noise
arm. Sound
is
department
yes!
lovely time.
What
she
gorgeous
lifts up her arm and it's floppy. Like,
yes, it is. In
And
the
the
script, I
tunk.
did describe that in the script. I said it was a wet snap.
Oh, Yeah,
That's
that-
accomplished.
They nailed it. Yep.
Nicely done.
Which I'm sure I stole from I probably stole it from It Follows or something. So all this stuff, that's the whole thing, is we do watch a lot of that stuff. We
Mhm.
watch, that movie I can't watch because it's way too scary for me, but I've heard it's excellent. But we watch lots of stuff. I'm way too, I can't even watch my show.
Me too.
I'm just terrified.
Just
But because the show in essence is a thriller, which is
Mhm.
odd
Yeah,
considering
it
what
is.
it's about, and odd because so much of it is so still. So it's a thriller, and you got to watch thrillers because otherwise you forget and get sucked in. You think it's a romance, you think it's an adventure story, you think it's a hero's journey, you think it's all these things, but it's not. And so you got to keep paying attention. It's a thriller. Different things
Mhm.
happen in thrillers. Sometimes the person who's telling the story gets killed in thrillers. That just happens. So it keeps the stakes up the more it feels like a thriller, and that can get away for you in, I'm trying to make it pretty, and I'm trying to make it funny, and I'm trying to make it, because I'm always trying, I know it's odd, but I'm always trying to make the show funny.
No, you nail it.
We
It
love
is
that.
funny.
Yes,
It's
we
very
love that.
funny.
We appreciate it
Like,
so
in
much.
fact, we appreciate the little moments where you are imbibing that levity into the show, like an $85 fine for the participation of Fred.
88, but yes.
Oh, 88. I apologize. It's just chef kissy fingers. And do you often find yourself injecting?
Transportation of an illegal, an unsecured biological sample. But go on. Yeah.
Yes. But I love the fact that you do inject that humor. Do you find yourself often injecting little humor and Easter eggs for people that are paying attention, or perhaps like you'll notice something that someone said like back like during season 2, because we know you read the comments, and do you find yourself like sprinkling those in at all, or is this just all like you're having fun with it and you just start putting in what you feel is gonna bring some levity?
I don't think about Easter eggs at all. In fact, but callbacks I think about all the time, because what I try to remember is these people lived that life, and for me it was years ago. For them, mostly it's months ago. And so don't forget what these people have been through, because the important thing here for me is, if it's going to be a good show, it has to be cumulative. The people have to go through what they go through, and then when they wake up the next morning, they went through all of that, and it's a new morning. And so June's reaction to stuff is very different now than it would have been before, but you just want it to feel like you're adding up to a real human being's life, because otherwise it feels at a certain point, if every day they just go home after their shift and they haven't changed, why am I watching? You want to see how this would change June, to say to yourself, well, how would it change me if I went through something like that? You really have to kind of see that. So I don't find myself planting Easter eggs. But I look at the show as a 60-40 operation, which is that if you turned it on and you didn't know anything about it, any episode, you should get about 60% of it. Any episode without the previously on, you should get about 60% of what's going on, ice cold. Because in the day that I work, 20 million people watch ER every week. And out of those 20 million people, 5 million were the same as the week before. So no one was watching week to week. You think everybody is because you're so involved in it and everything, but nobody is. So 60% of it is, I wonder what this is. Handmaid's Tale, that looks fun. And so that's the 40% is for people who is the bonus for watching the other shows, the other episodes. So, and that sometimes is 35% for most people and 5% for like really, but for me, what it is very much the characters living really in the world and remembering the things that happened to them specifically, and also having turns of phrase or little things. Now, I try to remember everything. That's, even though we have a system, it's not a Bible, but we have a system for remembering all that stuff, a timeline and everything. A lot of it's in my head, and I don't remember everything. I try to, because I really like the show to be survivable. If you pick it apart, you really pick it apart. It's still fun and deep, and oh, that's really there for a reason. But I'm not infallible, and I make mistakes, and I do things that I say things that characters say in a certain way that I regret, and all sorts of things like that, because it is cumulative. I'm stuck with what they've done. I can't have June just not be someone who killed Fred. She is that forever. So I think that's my callback, is my callback to the people and their lives and their experiences as seen in the show. But a lot of the callbacks that you guys see aren't really callbacks. They're just visual callbacks or something that I'm trying to kind of make you spark to it, but not really directly. It's a much more general callback, just, how we film lots of stuff, how we put, how where we put people in the frame, all of those things that you guys don't necessarily notice on the top of your head.
Right.
But if I changed all of them, the show would play completely differently for me. I
Interesting.
mean, I can, the amount that an editor can do to a scene is unfathomable even to most actors. I can make two characters seem in the same scene with the same dialogue that they love each other or hate each other, or that they're annoyed with each other just by changing music and pauses and adding looks and all that kind of stuff. So you can really screw up an actor's performance. On my show, I try really hard, and you guys can see it sometimes, to let the actors pace the scene. So sometimes I stay in whatever shot I'm in forever. On a normal show, you get out of that, but I like them to pace the scene as actors. They're very good at their job. They're much better at it than I am. So they should pace it. And then I follow that pace in the editing, as opposed to trying to quicken it up. So that means I can use scenes where I'm talking, then Roxy's talking, then Marjorie's talking, then I'm talking. And I can use that in one shot because it doesn't feel like it's way too slow for the rest of the scene.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Ah,
Blah, blah, blah.
Interesting.
That's
No,
not-
that's not blah, blah, blah.
No,
I
that's not
wanted-
blah,
you
blah,
could hear
blah.
you talk about that forever. That's so fascinating.
And we would genuinely love to talk about this with you forever, but we've taken so much of your time already. We have way more questions that we want to ask, but my word, maybe we'll get a chance to pick your brain another time. But this
Thank you
is
so much
truly,
for having me.
thank you so much for
Oh.
having us. And
Definitely cool.
oh my gosh, I'm just floored that you wanted to hang out and spend some time with us. So thank you again. And we can't wait we just finished season 5, and we can't wait for season 6 and to see what you do with it.
No pressure.